Hello and welcome to the Wednesday, December 11th, 2019 edition of Tesla Daily, unofficial Tesla podcast. My name is Rob Maurer. I know I said we'd have a longer episode today. I am pushing that one more day until tomorrow. Let me explain why. I was in Chicago most of the day preparing that episode, and I thought there'd be a good chance of me getting that out tonight, but it has become clear that there's definitely no chance of that happening. So first of all, I am behind on the news from doing that all day today, and then second of all, that episode will be out tomorrow. I am excited for it, and there will be video. So that's part of why it'll take a little bit longer. So I thought instead of missing an episode, I would do a quick one today to talk about the Porsche Taycan, which had its EPA range released today. For those of you that have not yet seen that, this is for the Porsche Taycan Turbo. So this is the lower end of their originally announced models. And then after that, they announced the 4S and the 4S Performance Plus or something like that with a slightly larger battery. So the Turbo sits in the middle of the lineup right now, and that's the only one we have the EPA numbers for so far. The EPA range rating for that Porsche Taycan Turbo is 201 miles. That's for a $150,000 car. This is much worse than I had forecasted. I had estimated conservatively that they would be at 233 miles, trying to give them the benefit of the doubt with that estimate, and I did that based on the midpoint of the WLTP min and max ranges they had shared, since we never got a combined WLTP rating. We knew it would be low, but 201 miles is shockingly low. Even the min rating on the WLTP cycle, whatever that equates to, would imply a range of 212 miles or so on the EPA test cycle. So we're nowhere close to hitting the midpoint between the minimum and maximum WLTP ranges they shared, but we're also not even hitting the minimum. Maybe for whatever reason the Taycan performs poorly in the EPA test, but has better real-world range. We'll have to see that once vehicles get out on the road, but definitely not an encouraging sign for Porsche here. It's especially troublesome because the Turbo variant was the second highest range if we're looking at the WLTP midpoints again in the lineup out of those four options. So this is probably not a perfect methodology, but it's really all we can go off of right now. But if we stack up the other trims and we look at the midpoints of those WLTP min and max ranges, and then just use that as a ratio to try to figure out what the EPA range might come out as for those other trims, it's not good. If we look at the 4S Performance, which is the most basic option offered right now, the midpoint for the range was about 10% lower on that version than it was on the Turbo. So the implied range here, using that as a coefficient, is 179 miles of EPA range. Now, I don't have a ton of confidence in estimating these. It seems like that midpoint theory, for whatever reason, isn't a good way to do this, but it's really the best information that we have out there right now. So it's really the only option that we have at this point, and at least it should be directionally indicative. So using the same math, the 4S Performance Plus, which is that base model with the larger battery pack, that would put the EPA range around 205 miles. And then for the Turbo S, which is the top of the line, $185,000 Porsche Taycan, that would imply a range of about 193 miles. So we'll have to see what it ends up as, but $185,000 and the range might end up being below 200 miles. I tweeted this out earlier, but seriously, what happens if the upcoming Plaid Model S, which is going to begin shipping in 2020, the same year as this Porsche Taycan Turbo S, what happens if the Plaid Model S has a 500-mile range or something like that, and it beats the Taycan around the Nürburgring, and it costs less? Like, how could this be any more clear? I mean, obviously that's speculative. We don't have the Plaid details yet, but even if you compare it to the Performance Model S today, you've got to make a lot of sacrifices to get maybe a little bit better track performance and a little bit better interior, if you even prefer the Porsche interior in the first place. Anyway, the other thing that I noticed when I was reading about this EPA range today was something that TechCrunch shared. I'll just read the quote here. Quote, "While Porsche said it isn't disputing the EPA range, the automaker did send an email to dealers Wednesday to share additional data that shows a far rosier picture. Porsche asked AMCI testing to conduct independent tests to evaluate the Taycan Turbo range, according to an email the automaker sent to dealers for Taycan customers. The independent automotive research firm came up with a range of 275 miles, a result that was calculated by averaging the vehicle's performance over 5 test cycles." End quote. Okay, so the max range on the WLTP standard that Porsche shared when they unveiled the Taycan Turbo was 280 miles. And that's on the WLTP standard, which is notoriously high relative to real-world range. So the WLTP in general is high. The max WLTP rating was 280, and then this supposed third-party independent testing is showing real-world range at 275 miles versus the EPA at 201. Pretty skeptical of that. And then Porsche goes and shares that with its dealers so that its dealers can share that with customers. Unless for some weird, unique reason to the Taycan, the EPA rating is extremely off. This just looks like a super sketchy move from Porsche that is going to mislead customers. 275 miles compared to 201 miles is a 37% difference. I really doubt the EPA test cycle is that far off for the Taycan. And it's not like the EPA would have messed up the test or something here, because generally the automaker is the one that is conducting and then submitting those test results. And Porsche said they're not disputing the EPA rating, so all signs here are pointing to shadiness from Porsche. Stuff like this is what makes it really hard to applaud when these other automakers come out with electric vehicles. I don't know, I'm probably being too harsh on this. I think we need to wait until the Taycan is out and actually has some testing. Maybe it'll be 275 miles and everything will be fine. I'm just pretty skeptical of that at this point. So that'll do it for today. Again, interview episode tomorrow. Looking forward to publishing that. In the meantime, make sure you're following me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. If you have questions or feedback, you can send those to me at tesladailypodcast@gmail.com. And if you're interested in supporting the show, you can find those details at patreon.com/Tesla Daily Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow for the Thursday, December 12th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.